Hey, greetings! Performance reviews, where I give you the review from the technician's point of view. And today, we're going to be repairing this Kirby. Now, before I get started, this video is just for informational purposes, kind of what goes into it. I do recommend you bring this to your authorized Kirby service center. I'll put a link in the description for that. I'm not liable if you try this at home and break your machine. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this bag off, clean it out. This will probably get laundered. Let's go ahead. I've already taken the cord off this machine when I had to diagnose it. Oh, looks like we got a Kirby treasure there. Throw that away. The other thing I like to do is just take this nozzle off. Let's see what's what. Ooh. Oh my. I think that needs to be cleaned off, to say the least. And we can see right here, 2012 on the date code of this one. And the rest of the machine was made in 2013. I like to use these metal trays, keep everything all together, because all this is going to get washed. Let's pull the handle off. And the handle, just press this and give it a good wiggle. Sometimes they get a little stuck, like this one has gotten a little rust in place, so we'll clean that up a little bit later. This one has already had the drive neutral pedal replaced. That's a common thing that has to be done on Kirbys. I like using an impact gun to remove the screws, but not to put them on. I found that some of the screws, particularly on the older machines, tend to get really on there if it hasn't been serviced. These newer plastic bodies, the lower part of this is plastic, the top half is aluminum. You don't really see that as much, but definitely like the older, first time you open up a G3 or G4 especially. Move that off. So that will all need to be washed. Then we get the guts of the Kirby. The pedals always get dirty, so I always just like to wash them. Now let's get to pulling the rest of this out. This particular one needs a switch. So first thing I like to do is drop the transmission. And again, don't try this at home. I know where all these screws go, but I'd be willing to bet not everybody does. And what also gets revealed to you is that there is a second belt on this machine. The only time I've ever seen one of these belts break is when this gear goes, and that seems to be an issue more on older specific models of Kirby. This one is starting to wear a little bit, but not too bad. This all needs to be cleaned out. I don't know who did this. Whoever did this did not. Alright, sorry, sometimes duty calls. So we've dropped the transmission. This will get cleaned out with compressed air and probably a Q-tip. And then when we're putting it back together is when I will clean the wheels in. You'll notice there's a lot of debris and stuff inside. Now, I've talked a lot about Kirby and it being what we call a dirty air machine, which means all the debris moves through the fan, gets blown to the bag, and the motor is actually cooling itself through this vent right here and through any other orifices. And we can also see here, right here, the caulk has come loose, which means it's blowing dust around the machine. So this needs to be resealed. And this, of course, all needs to be cleaned out because all that fuzz in there isn't good for any of the components. In fact, that's probably what's caused the switch to fail in this machine. So let's get to removing all this. And these screws right here are really where the impact gun is useful if it's an older machine. Now, Kirby has always had kind of a mix of old and new screws. A lot of the internal screws are Phillips on the motor itself. They really slowly switched to Torx, but unfortunately some of the stuff is still Phillips. One of the cool things is when you're doing a switch, you're also going to check the carbon brushes and make sure that they have plenty of life. Kirbys are one of the few vacuum cleaners left on the market you can still change the brushes on. This brush has lots of life. Looks pretty good. Gonna remove the light housing. So now we've gotten down to the motor, and let's see, bring this up for the camera. But we can see all that looks good. Man, I'm trying to decide if that sealant really has gone. So at this point, I kind of just like to pull the whole motor out. It's the easiest thing to do. Pull the Phillips out for the switch. And we're just going to take this and wedge that up. And the switch, when it comes out, they've used a variety of these different rods over the years. The older ones were a little bit easier to put back. This newer one, a little harder. And that switch is garbage. And so now we're going to pull out the cooling section. And it's important to clean this because you can see there's a lot of carbon dust and dust buildup on this. Really all this pieces. And then the motor needs to come out. Just wiggle it. And the motor and fan come out. And this point is where I like to really inspect the fan, make sure it's okay. And at this point, it's about where we're going to do this. Let me find the right size. There's just some stuff. This is a reverse thread, by the way. So just be aware of that if you're working on one of these. If you're really stubborn, then you want to use 2 screwdrivers and pry with even pressure. Like so. The other reason I like to take all this off is sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes other techs have been in here and they put those in the wrong order. So at this point, we want to inspect with a flashlight. Just around here and make sure all of that is good. And again, I can see where this particular machine, the seal has gone bad, so we'll have to reseal it up. That means we're going to pull off the additional screws. And then we're going to grab our biggest screwdriver. And there's just a pry point right there. And this probably is going to illustrate again. Not only could this catch on the fan, but this is catching stuff. It's just kind of like your tub in your bathroom. It needs to be recaulked occasionally. That's basically what this is. Yeah, you can see where stuff's been blown out the bottom too. So all that needs to be washed. We're going to go ahead and put that in the dishwasher. I can't put the aluminum stuff in the dishwasher, of course. All right, everything has been washed thoroughly. We're going to start putting things back together. And now you'll notice I've changed gloves, and we have a paper towel kind of set out. Let me put that where you guys can see it. And the reason being is we're going to have to seal this up in silicone too. Particularly, I like the GE squeeze tubes. Seems to be the best size to buy it for this application. We're going to apply this on here. Now there is a little bit left over I'm now looking at. So let's go ahead and change that, clean that up. We're going to go ahead and put this back on now. I like to do it upside down like this. I find it's a little bit easier to line up. And as we put this together, this is the first screw I always put in. It's just this one. Put this guy in. Let's put this on. All right. Now that we've put that on, we're going to have to clean it up a little bit. And that will also help ensure it makes a good seal and keep it from going everywhere on the bench. Now, where the cover is going to go on, it's not super important to clean it up. But again, I like doing a nice clean job. Best I can for the customer. So after I'm satisfied with that, I always like to look inside here, like around here, make sure there's no excess sticking up. Excess sticking out, of course, will lead to stuff catching on that and causing problems in the future. So that is nice and clean, and we're all glued up. That's pretty much what we're going to do. You want to let this particular adhesive set for about 30 minutes or so. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now that that's all done, let's go ahead and get to the fan assembly and some other things. There are a few things that just need to be wiped off that didn't go in the dishwasher or the sink. I just wiped them off by hand. One of which is this washer, which gets replaced if we're replacing the fan. So we're going to put this on. And there should be 2 more washers. It looks like one of them was missing. So we're going to go ahead and put this on. And I like to do the next tech a favor. You just put a couple drops of oil on the threads, which kind of helps seat that, make it a little nicer. And it'll act as an anti-seize. Don't do grease. There we go. That's as tight as it needs to be. Again, I really don't like that there seemed to be a washer missing on this one, but that is what it is. And before we put the motor back in, we're going to work with it a little bit, because it's a lot easier to slide the cluster switch in and do those parts now. Like so. That all just goes in. Like I said, a lot easier. It's amazing they haven't changed much in here since this machine first came out in 1989. I say 1989, it came out like in 1990, but a lot of them said 89, so that's what I say. Right. First screws go in are going to be these. Alright, those go in. And kind of the next measure of business is you've got this thing to put on, and then you'll have these 2. Those go right here. And you have to be careful, these grommets on these plastic housings are not particularly strong, so start them by hand and don't over torque them. Alright, so the carbon brush is just kind of going to go back, and everything's going to be kind of self-evident where it all goes. If you want to check out our Patreon, where we do kind of some exclusive videos, early videos, all sorts of other things, check that out. There'll be a link below. Alright, that goes on here. Now we're going to put these 2 long screws in, and it's important to do these before the glue is set in 30 to 45 minutes. So those are set in metal. Those get torqued down a lot differently than the rest of the stuff does. So we got that. Now pretty much everything is a similar screw at this point. This is typically where I like to put this thing back on. Again, older ones are going to look different and be slightly higher quality, in my opinion. I also like that the older ones were a little easier to put on. They had a flat spot on them, where these don't have a flat spot, and this just interacts with the pedal. There we go. So that's on. You just want to hold that like up out of the way, like that. Next, the belt. Make sure you dress the belt. A little bit of bar soap helps. Set that there. So now we're going to do some of the magic of the transmission work right here. This one's pretty clean. It's not too bad. First thing I'm going to do is just make sure everything is torqued. Those are torqued. Do not mess with any of the other screws on here. I am dead serious. Do not mess with these. I am not going to do a video explaining how to adjust this transmission, but it is rather complex for whatever reason. So we are going to put just a little bit of oil on it where it needs it. Try to extend the life of some of these parts. Part you want to look is, let's see if it'll focus. Alright, so this you want to make sure it's rounded. It should be like P-shaped. If it's flat, it needs to be replaced. This one, remarkably, is alright. So let's give it some grease. And do not overdo the grease, you don't need very much. Like, that's pretty much all the grease you need there. You can put some grease on the cam if you want. I like to be real cautious because a lot of times the grease will attract some of the schmutz and make things worse. So putting this back in, you're essentially just gonna like line that up and dip that in drive. All right. Next, we're gonna put this little screw on here. And the serial number of the machine and the serial number of the transmission are different. They are not going to match. So if you try to put this in neutral, it's not going to work. You need to do it in drive. That just needs a drop of oil on that. Excellent. Next, we are going to put all this together. We're doing several things at once. We're lining the belt up, the pedal, and we're going to line the yoke up right here. Then once everything's lined up, make sure everything's on there. Excellent. And it's at this point I'll put the pedal on. It comes with grease from the factory. There's no reason to put grease on it. It doesn't squeak. So at this point, we're just going to put our transmission screws on. Once again, do not over torque these. So now you can see. Yep, that's excellent. Now I'm going to adjust the yoke, see if there's any play in the yoke. That's probably going to be good. But I like to be cautious, so I am just going to check by hand all the torque settings. Yeah, that was a little loose. And if the bearing races are off on this, I'll bring the camera over here. So if the bearing races are not lined up, as you can see, it's hanging off, that will cause some premature wear. So we actually need to pull that the fuck out of there. So that all comes out. It's at this point you'll want to just clean these. These are bone dry. These are super dry. I don't know why they're so dry. That's unusual. Yeah. All right. So that's not good. Now, if you're just leaving this in here, you can put a couple drops of oil, but these are so dry, I'm going to have to grease these properly. So let's go ahead and do that. They're real easy to grease and adjust. And once they're greased, they are going to stay right in their little home. Just fine. So again, something you don't want to over lubricate, but does need lubrication. These are harsh in any way, then they need to be machined down and sanded and stuff. so that can be a hassle. But doing this makes the transmission buttery smooth, which is why I do this. We are going to line all this up. There's a couple things going on here. Do not just crank down on this piece. This is it's an adjustment screw is what it is. So you don't want to really, that doesn't really need to get torqued like other things. Let's see me torque this by hand. Just put that into place. All right, so now that we know kind of where the neutral and drive is, we want to adjust the bearing races just a little bit. Why everything's loose, make sure they're nice and centered. Those look nice and centered. We're going to torque the one side down. Almost. All right. So this is, again, this is where a little bit of experience makes a huge difference. So I'm going to look for a side-to-side play. There's side-to-side play. So we're going to screw this down. Still side-to-side play. No side-to-side play. Let's put the proper amount of torque on there. No side-to-side play, and now the bearing race is lined up properly. Check my torque by hand. That's good. Now this thing can be as loosey-goosey as you want it to be in there. Its whole job is to just clamp that and take out the play. So that is how we adjust the yoke in every single machine that comes through the store. A lot of mechanics do not do this properly. So that's what we do there. So now we're just kind of ready to stick our lid on. It just kind of goes in there like that. As I'm putting this on, yeah, these rubber things just do not settle as nicely in these machines. The aluminum's a little thinner. The newer machines are not as nice to work on as the older ones, is what I have found. All right, excellent. Rearrange the camera for your viewing pleasure. Put this cord back on. So we've cleaned the bag out. So at this point we're going to put a genuine inner bag in there, and it's important to only use genuine Kirby parts. I can't stress that enough. This takes the newer style with the docking station. Put a new bag in there. When we say new bag, we mean inner bag. We don't mean the outer bag, though we stock those. And this goes on. Now, this gasket here always needs a little love. And if you don't give him the right amount of love, your bag becomes really hard to put on. That is a lot easier. And over here I have the rest of this. So at this point we're going to route the cord properly. Again, genuine Kirby belt. That brush roller looks a lot better after we gave it some attention. And these brush rollers are eccentric, so pay attention to the end cap when you're putting it in. You'll see they have numbers. This one is in fantastic condition for its age. So we're going to put that on. And you can see the condition of the machine the customer is getting back is going to be clean, nice, sanitized, and ready to go. Now with this particular machine, I'm going to wipe it down with Windex. I find that works best. Insert your best big fat Greek wedding joke below. It's a high mileage Kirby, but I think the customer will be happy with the results here. Now it's time to clean the wheels. Man, that's operating smooth as butter. So much better than when it came in when we first started. This machine is ready to go live out its life, cleaning off the floor. So if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe. That helps us out a whole lot. If you want to talk more about vacuum cleaners that are not Kirby related, check out our Discord server and have yourself a wonderful day. Most globally outsourced of all of them at the current moment. And again, that just has to do with not being able to get certain things, but they're all, you know, a good 80+% made in the United States, with the exception of the Daisun